Jonathan, welcome to Watchbox Studios, where we're going to be having a collector's conversation today. Thanks for coming in and bringing your awesome collection that you're going to share with us and all of our viewers on Watchbox. So thanks for coming in. And before we get started about the watches, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came into falling into love with watches.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me here. I'm happy to be here. Happy to talk about my collection. I'm definitely a watch enthusiast. So just a little bit about myself. I'm a lawyer currently with Condé Nast, specifically Condé Nast Entertainment. Essentially, I'm responsible for all of the video projects that Condé Nast puts out related to all of our brands. So whether it's GQ, Vogue, Vanity Fair, and the list goes on, they kind of come through my door and we make some great work. So that's what I do. In terms of the watches and how I got into watches, it's kind of a long story. It's kind of reared its head many times. When I was a little kid, I would always go to my grandparents' house and my great-grandparents' house. And my great-grandparents had this artwork made out of clock parts. And I would constantly stare at this and be kind of transfixed by all of these parts, be really interested in the inner workings, and it was something that I was always drawn to. And so when my great-grandparents passed, that was the one thing I asked for. It was this artwork, and you saw the springs, you saw the gears, all the dials, all kind of broken apart and disassembled into pieces of art. So that kind of got me interested in watches. From there, I'd say I always associated watches with, some level of maturity, being an adult, having responsibility. So various points in my life, I would buy pieces that kind of signified that. And it started out at all different levels. I remember at one point I didn't have a watch, and I went into a mall and bought a Kenneth Cole, and was like, this kind of makes me feel a little bit more mature. This was probably when I was 15 years old. But from there, it kind of evolved and grew into what I have now and what we're going to talk about.
Of all these watches that you have here, do you say that most of them get an equal amount of wear time, or?
So I never try to force a watch onto my wrist. I do try to give them their fair share of time.
No pun intended.
Yeah, no pun intended, for sure. But yeah, I don't try to ever force to put a watch on, because if I feel like I'm doing that, then the question is, why is it in the collection? And so I think I'm at a point where, unless it's a really interesting piece I'm looking for or a unique piece in any way, I definitely have a feeling that if something's coming into the collection, something probably might have to go out. And I would probably look at a piece that I don't wear too often. There's a couple other pieces that don't get a lot of heavy wrist time, but everything definitely sees some time.
Okay, super. Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to pick out a couple of watches, and why not start with the first watch that got it all started. And why don't you tell us about this Bulova?
Yeah, so this Bulova was a gift from my wife. This watch was a gift a year into when we started dating. It's a quartz watch. It's about 38 millimeter. Not something I wear any longer, but not something that I can really get rid of. It's got a lot of sentimental value. It's a piece that just kind of instantly transported me back to the beginning of our relationship. And it's just something I could never get rid of, and it really doesn't have a monetary value anymore.
So you could basically blame your wife for getting you into this habit.
You know what? I definitely could. I don't know how much she loves the fact that I'm in it, but I can absolutely blame her for getting me here. That's for sure.
Right, cool.
But yeah, it's a cool piece. It's a fun piece. I always look at it. It's unfortunately not something I put on that often, but I always make sure it's running. When that battery dies, I change it very quickly.
Awesome.
For sure.
And I noticed you set all your watches to the current time, which is, very cool and very respected.
Absolutely, I do. I also don't use any kind of watch winders. I always set them that day, and people always ask, why don't you use a winder? Isn't it annoying to have to set a watch? But I love, when I choose the watch for a given day, I love winding it and setting it and making that connection with the piece when I go to put it on. I think that's kind of all part of it.
Spoken like a true aficionado.
For sure.
Awesome. So that was the first piece that we're looking at. The piece that stuck out to me, I mean, they're all great pieces, but let's talk about this Swatch System 51.
Yeah, the Swatch System 51, really cool watch, really fun watch. So I'm very categorical when I look at watches. I always try to find pieces to fit different categories of my life. And this piece was just such a fun, like, I have to go outside quickly, I have to walk the dog, have to do something. This is like the very quick, throw it on, like don't have a second thought, and just have fun. It's a really cool watch. It's got a fun rubber strap. It's relatively inexpensive. It's got a really cool movement.
Yeah,
I think the movement in the Swatch System 51s is really cool. The whole thing is held together by one screw, completely machine made. I forget what the number is, but I think like from start to finish it takes like under 20 minutes to make one of these. And it's just a really fun piece that I just I love to have and I love to put on and not have a second thought about. It's got a great dial. It's the System 51 Planet. And it's just a really fun watch. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a great looking piece.
Yeah.
Definitely not something you can wear every day, but when you wear it, it's very noticeable, and I'm sure it's super comfortable. It's lightweight.
For sure.
It's a mechanical watch, and priced at a good price. So.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's a great way for people to get into mechanical, and it's also a great way to have a mechanical watch at a lower price point that you can just have fun with. And it's it's a fun piece. It's not something I could wear to the office, but on the weekend, without a second thought, I can throw this on.
Why don't we try the Seiko, the diver watch?
Yeah, for sure. So this is a Seiko Prospex PADI special edition. This is a really cool watch, and as I was saying, I try to find pieces that fit different categories of my life. And this, for me, is a beater watch, quote unquote, that can go in the water without a second thought. It's 200 meters water resistant. I thought it's got a really cool dial that kind of changes from blue to black.
The lume?
The lume is crazy.
Yeah,
the lume
multicolor, right?
It's multicolor, rotates between blue and green. And Seiko just makes a great watch. The rubber strap is so comfortable. It's made really well, constructed really well. It's sturdy. It's got this really cool blue accent on the bezel, on the side of the bezel, this coin edge side. And it's really comfortable. Jump in the water for the price. Like, you really can't beat it. They just make such a cool piece. And at this price point, there's a lot out there, but I just think it's really tough to beat a Seiko.
Well, this piece definitely caught our eyes, and the price made it a quick favorite of the staff. Let's talk about this Hamilton.
Yeah, so this is a Hamilton khaki field mechanical 38 millimeter. Again, as I was saying, I always look for watches that kind of fit different categories of my life, and that Seiko PADI watch is like my kind of like water beater, and this is kind of the one for land. It's a field watch. It's got a cool strap, cool lume. It does have that faux patina on it, which people can love or hate. But I think it's just a really fun watch, like on the weekends, like without a second thought, like whatever you're doing outside, like you can throw this on and not have a second thought about it. It's really comfortable. The price is great. It's below $400 retail. It's super thin. It's a manual wind, and it's just a really easy watch to wear and a very enjoyable watch. I find myself putting this on really frequently, which is kind of surprising to me sometimes, and I really like it.
That's your. Well, you have two manual on watches, right? That's your one manual on watch.
Right.
And then you have another one. So
exactly.
We're going to get to that one just a little bit later. So Hamilton. And
yeah.
What I'm seeing in your collection is, and now we're going to kind of get into some of the more serious pieces, that you did a good job of building your collection, right? For instance, let's talk a little bit about Rolex now. And you came in wearing the Submariner, aka Hulk, which you just got recently. So,
yeah.
Tell us about that one and why'd you buy it?
Yeah. So this is the Rolex Submariner Hulk. It's a great piece. I think obviously everyone knows it pretty well. It's it's the Submariner, which is probably one of the most classic, well-known watches out there in the world and in the history of watchmaking. It's been replicated thousands of times over. But I love this watch for a number of reasons. One being green is my favorite color. So seeing this, I was instantly enamored. I also love the fact that the dial rotates between like a light green to even a black at times, depending on the light, which is just a really cool aesthetic. Also the fact that just in the land of and sea of the Submariners out in the world, This is just not one you see as often. So it does separate itself a bit, and I just really enjoy the piece. The lume is amazing. The modern case sizing is a little bigger, but it's fun and it's still extremely comfortable. And it's just a great watch. I love the piece. How I got it was kind of crazy. I just happened to be.
You called me and I said, get it.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked. I just happened to be strolling through New York. I walked into an AD. They happened to just get one in, and I couldn't say no.
Of course.
And it's a great piece. I definitely wear this one a good amount. And I really enjoy it. It's a fun watch. It's versatile. The green adds definitely a cool aesthetic, and I really like it.
Yeah, definitely one of the hottest watches Rolex makes. I mean, Rolex is one of the hottest brands right now, and
For sure.
so obviously, when you sent me a picture of that watch, and you said that you could get one new, I mean, I said jump on it.
Right,
So,
for sure.
You know, great job.
And I love the brushed bracelet. I love the glide lock, especially in the summer, because my wrist changes a lot, like depending on the heat. Like I can feel it expand or get a little bit smaller. So I'm constantly using the glide lock on here, which is really cool.
Cool. Well, and let's segue right into Rolex, because there's a couple of pieces here that I remember. Let's start with one of the first ones that you got.
Yeah, for sure. So this is the Rolex Oyster Perpetual 39mm blue dial. I love this watch so much. It's a simple three-hand watch. I'm kind of a sucker for three-hand no-date watches. That's really my favorite genre. I just love classic, simple, clean lines. And this watch is actually probably my wife's favorite watch in my entire collection. It's versatile. It can go with everything, dressed up, dressed down. The green subtle indices.
About to say, green's your favorite
Green's
color.
favorite color. It adds this subtle little aesthetic that's really cool. It's got a little bit of lume. The size is right. I like when I don't know what to wear. This one kind of goes on pretty frequently, and I love the fully brushed bracelet. And for the price, it's kind of unbeatable from Rolex. It's pretty amazing.
It's definitely underpriced for what it is. I mean, it's a Rolex made watch. You know, one quality standard, the best. It just happens to be an under $6,000 watch. So
for sure,
anybody out there who's interested in getting a Rolex to start their collection with, 39mm Oyster Perpetual.
It's kind of the way to go.
It's definitely the way to go.
And I love it because, when people look into this model, they look at the rhodium dial, they look at the new black and white dials that have come out. When I was looking at these, I found the rhodium to be a little hard to read. The new black and white are great. They have the fully lumed indices around. But something about this Rolex blue is just, and they do blue so well. And when I saw this one, I thought this was the one. It's kind of a no-brainer for me.
And the light touch of green, that's the little drops of green for the hour markers. That also, did it for me as well.
Yeah, it just adds such a fun aesthetic to this watch that I really like, for sure.
So after that, you decided. Why not go with
the other Submariner? So this is a slightly vintage Rolex Submariner. This is the no date 14060. This is the last model they made with tritium indices. The lume on this watch has since gone out, which I actually really like because the indices are starting to ever so slightly patina. So looking forward to that to continue. This is the pre-super cased Submariner. I love this watch because it wears a little slimmer than the modern Rolex watches that are in the sport line. Some people hate this bracelet. They look at the older bracelets as like very, very noisy and rattly and just not built sturdy up to what people think Rolex should be making. But I love it. It's comfortable. It's relatively light. It's low profile, and it's a really just fun classic Rolex that you just don't see anymore. The two lines on the dial just make it such a clean look. And as I said, no date three-hand watches are kind of my go-to, and this one kind of hits it so well. It's comfortable. It's still completely water resistant. I had to test it, and the gaskets, everything are good to go. So I don't go in the water with it, but I like knowing that I could.
Of course.
And it's just a really fun, comfortable, versatile piece. It's really it's kind of the epitome of what you're looking for in a watch, and I just love that it's it's just such a simple looking watch. And even though it's simple, there's so much behind it, which is great.
Well, that opened up the doors for the next watch that we're going to talk about, which is the GMT Master II. No, this is not the black and blue. This is the all black.
Yeah, this is no Batman, it's no Pepsi, it's no Coke. This is the fully black bezeled GMT Master II. This is probably my favorite watch in my collection.
Yeah, you were just telling us that if there's one watch that you would not trade,
yeah, this is probably
value,
it.
That's it.
So for a number of reasons, I think it's the most versatile piece in my collection. Between my wife and I, we travel a ton for work and for pleasure, and I constantly use the GMT function. I use the jumping hour hand more than I probably like to because of the amount that we travel. So it's just it's so versatile. It's so easy to use. It's something that, I put on all the time. I love the black bezel. I love the green. As I said, green is my favorite color. So having that little splash of green where it says GMT Master as well as the GMT hand, I love it. I think it's a great versatile piece. I love the Batman. I love the other GMT Masters. I think this one is a little bit more stealth. It kind of flies under the radar a little bit. And in a really cool way that, people don't really know what it is as much as the others, I think.
And there's that little touch of green in there. Which
yeah, and there's that little splash of color, which just makes it a fun piece.
Do you ever use a third time zone? I mean, I know.
I use it occasionally. I do. I definitely use it occasionally, and so there have been times where I have my home time, I have where I am, I have where my wife is. So
got it.
It took a little time after getting the piece to be able to glance at it quickly and read all of the time zones, but now it's really easy. It's really quick. The bezel on this is just so easy to move. It's really amazing how well Rolex makes their watches.
And if speaking of bezels, compare the two between your sub no date.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Just that little bit of an improvement on the bezel. It just makes all the difference. I mean, it's just the luster of it, the fact that it's scratch resistant.
Yeah,
it's not going to wear over time. That's one of the things that Rolex does better than anybody. I mean, they're constantly improving. And,
for sure.
This is sort of the best version of what they've been making for 100 years now.
Absolutely. The ceramic bezels are pretty amazing. I will say
This goes back to the 50s, though, right? 1956, or is it 1953 where they came out with the GMT for Pan Am?
Right, exactly. Yeah, no, the GMT Master to me is just such a perfect watch. It wears a little slimmer than the Submariner, the modern Submariner. The polished center links add a little bit of a flair to it and a bit of dressiness that I think is really cool. And it really just, again, obviously Rolex is an expensive watch. There's definitely no denying that it's significant money, but for what you're getting in this world, in compared to what you're paying, I think it's a great deal if you get this at retail.
Cool. Well,
for sure.
So 4 Rolex watches in your collection.
Yeah.
And a cousin.
Let's
talk about your Tudor.
For sure. So this watch I love, and this is definitely a watch that, reading blogs and reading articles, it's a watch that is, when it was released at Baselworld a year ago, the 2017, it was hotly contested because people were like, "What is it? Is it a diver? Is it a version of a Daytona? What's going on here?" It's the Tudor Black Bay Heritage Chrono. It's a 41 millimeter watch. I love this watch. It's a great chronograph that's kind of the brainchild and a partnership between Tudor and Breitling. So the movement in here is basically a base BO1 Breitling chronograph movement, which is one of the best chronograph movements ever made. And Tudor took that movement and built on it to make this watch. It's an amazing vertical clutch column wheel chronograph. The lume is excellent. I love the subtle red line of text. The date window is used very well. It's not overly, it doesn't feel forced in any way on the dial. And for me, the craziest part about this watch is the strap. This watch,
originally it comes on a bracelet, but it comes with a strap that you can change it with, and that's what you're going to get into right now.
Right, exactly. So Tudor I don't think they do it with the newest watches from Baselworld 2018, but prior, a watch like this, Tudor, you would either get it on a bracelet or a leather strap, but it would come with this alternate strap. And this is a denim woven strap. And I don't know for the life of me why Tudor doesn't advertise this watch more on this strap. The looms that they make this on in France are over 125 years old. You can find videos online of how these straps are made, and it's remarkable. The French loom and family that make these straps make all of the clothing for the Vatican. It takes a long time to make one of these straps. They're so comfortable. I think it adds just a really nice aesthetic to this watch and makes it a little. It's fun to dress this down and have fun with. And I just love this watch. I think it's really versatile. It's a fun weekend watch. And it's great. I love putting this on the weekend. I love wearing this. I love the chronograph that it's, a great movement from a great brand. And I really love Tudor. I think it's kind of Rolex's way of having a little fun under the radar. And I think this is just a great watch that they made.
Cool.
For sure.
All right. So... So far, I mean, we've gone through a bunch of watches.
Yeah.
Now we're going to kind of get into some of the masterpieces. Let's start with a super iconic watch, the Zenith El Primero.
Yeah, for sure. So this is a Zenith El Primero. It's got a long name. It's a Zenith El Primero Chronomaster Heritage 146. So this watch is a bit of a throwback for Zenith. It's a 38 millimeter watch. This is the brown dial. It's the El Primero movement, which is right there with the BO1 as two of the best chronograph movements ever made. It's a very clean, classic dial. The movement is obviously remarkable. Zenith, just the way they dress and work on their movements is spectacular. And I love this watch. 38 millimeter is a great size for a dressier watch, and I think this is definitely a dressier chronograph. And it's clean, it's simple, it's really comfortable. It's definitely a watch you don't see too often. But Zenith is a great brand. I think in terms of brand equity, they're not really there right now. But considering they've made movements for Audemars, Patek, Vacheron, and make these beautiful watches, I think that it's really a great piece, and they make some really cool stuff. And this for me is the Tudor chronograph is kind of my fun, sporty chronograph that's like for the weekend, whereas this one is definitely a bit dressier. I can wear to the office, and it just goes really well with a suit or a button down, and it's just a great piece. The movement's so much fun to you can get lost in this movement, I think.
Yeah, that star on that rotor is just, you see it right away, and boom,
yeah.
that is...
It's just a beautiful,
one
beautiful
of the most
movement.
Significant chronograph movements in
For
the
sure.
history of watchmaking.
Yeah, no, I love the piece. This one, unfortunately, doesn't get a ton of wrist time. I don't know why, though.
Probably
because
the color limits you.
Yeah,
right?
the brown is a little limiting. I kind of love it because it blends in a little bit and flies under the radar with that brown. But yeah, definitely doesn't see the wrist time that some of the other pieces do, for sure.
Well, maybe you just convince yourself to wear that watch a little bit more.
I think you might be right. I might start wearing this a little bit more. That's for sure.
Well, we're down to our last three watches. I think I'm going to go with the JLC Master Control.
Yeah, so this is the Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Control date sector dial watch. I wear this watch to work all the time. It's thin, it's clean, it's classic. It's got a really clean, simple dial. I love the sector dial. It's such a throwback. It's got, the date isn't like overly intrusive on the dial, which I love. It's a great movement. I think it's about 8 millimeters thin. It's really comfortable. Blue leather strap. Obviously, JLC makes some great movements.
It also is
really well.
True to who you are. You like the simplicity of it.
For sure.
It's got the hours, minutes, date. This is definitely an exceptional piece. I'm so happy to see this in your collection.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I'm definitely not a dressy person. I have kind of worked my adult life to find a job where I don't need to be a dressy person.
Awesome.
I started my career in litigation after law school, and it was a suit and tie every day. And I was sitting in an office wondering why do I have to wear this if I'm sitting in a box all day? Like there's just no point for this. So every job since then has been a gradual move to find more casual opportunities. So, I'm like this, a polo shirt and jeans, like that's my go-to. And I try to get watches that can be versatile enough to go with that, with a t-shirt, with a suit. And this one I think kind of hits all of those segments. I can wear this with everything.
This can be worn anywhere with anything for any occasion.
For sure.
It's a great watch. Definitely a house favorite by you-know-who.
Yeah. Yeah, Tim would appreciate at least I have one JLC in the collection, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Two pieces left. I think I'm going to go with the Patek Philippe because I'm going to leave the best story for last.
Okay.
Let's talk about this Calatrava.
Yeah, so this is a Patek Philippe Calatrava. This is in rose gold. It's the 5107R automatic watch. So I will say, I'll preface this by saying most Calatravas I don't love. I think they're too dressy. And not to say this is not a dressy watch, but it's got some aesthetics to it that allow it to be a bit more versatile. A lot of watches of this genre are pretty small. This is a 37 millimeter, which I think is a great size. It's got crown guards that add like a subtle flair to it, a little bit of sportiness. So yeah, it's dressy, but I wear this with what I'm wearing now. I wear this with polos and jeans all the time, and I think it works.
This was Patek Philippe's Calatrava that sort of went from being conservative to a little bit more sporty, a little bit more wearable on a daily basis.
For sure, I think this is, and Patek Philippe, I think, they kind of hit both ends of the spectrum. They have like the super dressy, and then they have the super sporty with things like the Aquanaut and the Nautilus. And this one kind of does a good job of hitting both of those segments. I love the dial. I love the rose gold. I'm not a huge gold person, but I think the rose on this works really well. Obviously, Patek movements are finished beautifully, so I love to look at the gold rotor and the perlage and the handwork around the rotor and on the movement. I think it's just such a well-made, well-dressed movement, and I love wearing this watch. This is what's crazy is I think when I wear this watch, people don't notice it. It kind of flies under the radar versus like some of the Rolex watches.
Sure.
But it's just when I look down at this watch, you realize that someone made this by hand. Someone sat at a desk putting this thing together. Multiple, right. This is not like something
this is hours
machined
of just know-how and watchmakers basically pouring their heart and soul into making one of the best made timepieces in the world. So.
Absolutely, and It is. I look for versatility in all the watches that I wear, and this one does it for me. It's even though it's on the dressier end of my collection, I still put this thing on with a t-shirt and jeans.
And there was a funny story about this, right? I think you were calling me because you were looking to get a gift for, was it your dad?
Yeah, so we were looking for a gift, but really I was being tricked because it was something that was going to be given to me.
Exactly.
Which was really funny. So I didn't have to shell out the big bucks for this one. Luckily, this was something handed to me as a gift. But I love it. It's there's a lot of watches out there that especially in the Calatrava genre that I probably wouldn't have loved in terms of giving it a lot of wrist time. But this is definitely one that sees a lot of time. I really love it.
It's a great looking watch.
For sure.
Wear it in good health and wealth.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Let's finish up with this vintage Omega that you have a great story about that I'm sure our viewers want to hear.
For sure. Yeah, so this is a really cool piece. This is a vintage Omega from 1952. I got this watch in Ireland when my wife and I were on vacation there. And so every time I go on vacation, I never look up authorized dealer for new pieces, but I'm always looking for vintage shops, vintage watch shops, different things. And I found this vintage watch shop in Dublin. And they have this really cool antique market in that city. And there's this tiny little shop. It's probably no more than 300 square feet. It's this one guy sitting in the back with the loop on his head, working on watches, and then maybe like 20 pieces in the front of his little shop that he's showing. So I walked in, I was kind of looking at some of the pieces, I saw some really cool things, and then I saw this Omega, and I was kind of taken by it. It was on a different strap at the time. It was on a black leather strap, which I didn't love with it. So I had him swap it out for a brown leather strap. But it's a really cool vintage piece. It's got a bit of a honeycomb dial, which is a little hard to see. But one of the coolest things about this watch, which I found out, was the story behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see at 12 o'clock, so most of the, this is an Omega reference 2496. Most of the watches with that reference have a 12, 3, 6, and 9 on the dial. Some also only have 12. This watch you actually don't see too often. It's got a little bit of a unique indice marker on the top. It looks almost like a fleur-de-lis in a certain way. And so I got this watch, and it was a little pricier than I expected, knowing like this market. But I loved it, and I loved the way it looked, the movement. He took off the case back and showed me the work he did on the movement, and everything about it I loved. So I didn't really know the story about it when I got it. So after coming back from Ireland, I wanted to ask him, because I was asking about a lot of pieces and a lot of stories, and I didn't ask about the one I bought, which I thought was crazy. Mm-hmm. So I asked him, I said, do you have a story about this watch? Because I knew that he was only taking in pieces that he could trace them. They weren't just like someone coming in and selling him a watch. So he wrote me back with a story that was like I was blown away by. So this Omega in the 50s, and you can tell by that 12 o'clock marker, these were issued to members of the British Royal Navy who essentially had desk jobs during that period. So these were gifts given to them, and the person that sold this watch to this watch shop was the son of the Navy, the individual who served in the Navy for Britain at that time. So he was in the Navy. He had a desk job in the Navy in the 50s. This watch was given to him. He then gave it to his son, who then traded it in. So after I found that out, I was kind of blown away. I thought it was such a cool story, and I started doing some research on it and trying to verify that was true, which I did. And it just makes it such a really unique piece because, beyond hearing that story, it's of the 2496s you can find out there, I haven't seen another one look like this anywhere.
I was looking all over for it yesterday.
Yeah.
I couldn't find that. I could not find that dial anywhere online.
Yeah, it's a really cool watch. It's obviously you can there's a lot of marks on the case, and it's been worn. It's as it should have been. At this time these watches were meant to be worn, and people didn't have a second thought about whether or not it got hit on a door or a desk or whatever it may be. But I think it's just a really unique, cool piece.
How about today? Would you wear this watch often, or just on special occasions?
So I wear this watch a fair amount. Obviously, I'm a little bit more careful with it, just considering it's with vintage watches. It's not like I can go replace it.
Of course.
So I wear it occasionally to the office. It is a smaller watch. I think it's about a 35 millimeter, maybe 34. But I think with vintage, the size doesn't matter as much because it's more than just a watch for the sake of wearing a watch. There's story behind it, and
The
there's
rarity,
history.
the history, all of that.
Yeah, so it's wearing a piece of art. And this one I really love. I wear it when I can. I make sure that it's not raining. I make sure that I'm not doing anything crazy that day. But I really love the story and knowing.
Take your watch off when you wash your hands.
Yeah, I'm very careful with this one. And I love the story. I love the history, and it's definitely a piece I really enjoy, and it's definitely made me more interested in looking into more vintage pieces down the line.
Awesome.
For sure.
Well, it's amazing that at such a young age that you can have such a wonderful collection of watches. And like we were kidding around today, we were like, you're just getting started. I know that you have your eye on a couple of other pieces, and obviously this is really just the beginning. Let's talk a little bit about some future purchases, or everybody's favorite question. What's your Grail watch or your Grail watches? Like,
yeah.
Do you have certain pieces that you're eyeing, and anything that you're planning on building? Certain brands that you haven't bought yet? Want to touch base on that a bit?
Yeah. So the half of the enjoyment of building a collection and learning about watches is the pursuit of the next one. Like there's no denying that. With me, as I've said, it's a nice size collection. So unless it's like a unique piece for one to come in, I think something would have to go out. So I'd have to think about what's not necessarily getting enough wrist time. But with that said, there's definitely a number of pieces that I always have my eye on. I've loved the Aquanaut. That's a piece I definitely want to add to the collection. It hits every aspect of my life. It's sporty, it's fun, doesn't take itself too seriously, but it's made well, an amazing brand. The finishing is superb. I love the strap. It's definitely a piece that I want to add in the near future. I just love it. It's a great piece.
If you had all the money in the world, what's that? What is that one Grail watch?
So I'm a little bit more interesting in that the watches that are my Grail watches aren't like astronomical prices. Like, there's obviously some heavily complicated Pateks out there that are just remarkable. And between, some of the pieces from Longa that I love, they make some really remarkable tourbillons, and there's just a lot of pieces out there that I admire for the work put into them, and I love to see them and learn about them. But it's not something I myself would ever want to own, because the pieces that I want to own, I want to really wear. With that said, there's definitely a number of pieces, higher price points that I really love. It's hard not to say that the new Nautilus that was released at Basel, it's a grand complication. It's got an amazing dial. It's a beautiful watch. It's done well. It's not an overly busy dial, but that's definitely a piece I would love to add. Other than that, there's nothing I would say that's really crazy that I want to add. Some of the complicated Aquanauts I really like. The World Time, the Travel Time one is a great watch. I think that's really cool. Their new Chrono is really cool. But other than that, yeah, the watches that I think are my Grail watches are not. They're expensive for sure, but they're not so out of reach that it's like, oh, there's no point of even thinking about it. It's definitely something to work towards in the future.
Well, this was an honor and a pleasure talking to you. I mean, we see each other at least once or twice a week.
Absolutely.
You're definitely a watch collector, somebody that appreciates watches, somebody that we at Watchbox wanted to show our viewers and also welcome other viewers to share their experiences like you. So thank you very much for having us and our viewers take a look at your collection and just hear your thoughts, and everything that you just discussed was really amazing. Also, when looking at this collection, you stay true to yourself.
Yeah.
You buy what you love, you buy what you like, and you're not really persuaded by what other people are buying. This is what you like, and that's what you go after. And I think that's really nice, because there are a lot of people out there who just are looking over other people's shoulders and say, oh, what are you going to get, or what do you have?
Right.
And you're just like, this is what I like, and I'm not.
Yeah, no, that's really important to me. We're in a world where, when things are popular, everyone wants them. And obviously there's some pieces here that, are certainly popular. Like the GMT Master is a really popular piece, but, even having the opportunity to acquire the BLNR, the Batman, or even another version of it, those are great. They're super popular, but this is the one I love. Yep. I love the solid black bezel, and I love the green accents, and that's the watch I love.
Cool.
Even with the Hulk, it's a really sought after piece. But I love it because green's my favorite color. I love what it represents. I love it's a bit unique, and it's something that I know that I love for what it is, not for what the market and the world says it is. So I really am careful what I add to the collection, and I want to make sure it's something that I love for what it is and what it represents, and how it works into my life. So that's kind of how I built this. And thank you for having me. You know that I'm a huge fan of the Watchbox. I love the content you guys create. I love the programs. I love the information. Obviously, the platform that you guys have is so great and so unique. The ability to buy, sell, and trade watches the way you guys have created is really awesome, and I love what you guys are doing. So
thank you.
I'm happy to be a part of it.
Thank you. We look forward to building your collection together, and
for sure.
Talking watches anytime you ever want to come into the store. Or
absolutely.
Just see what just came in.
Thanks.
Jonathan Sachs, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
Appreciate it.